Now she lived with Omar and his mother, Mrs. Khan, who kept the house immaculate and the air colder than the radiator ever could. Mrs. Khan's voice was small but precise. Her disapproval landed like a pin on a map, always finding the softest place. "You didn't salt the potatoes enough," Mrs. Khan said the first week, tapping the rim of her cup. "And your scarf, why that color? It doesn't suit you." Ayesha smiled and poured more tea. She learned to make her hands steady when they trembled. She learned to fold her answers into short, careful sentences. "I will not raise my voice," she told herself. "I will not make this worse." She worked part-time at a bakery, hands dusted with flour, smiling at customers while her chest felt hollow. At night, she lay awake, listening to the house breathe. Mrs. Khan's footsteps in the hallway sounded like verdicts. Omar retreated into his phone. The silence between them grew thick. Once, at 3 in the morning, Ayesha sat on the edge of the bed and watched the ceiling, the rain making a slow, steady drum on the window. "I can't do this forever," she thought, the thought a small, sharp stone in her throat. Arguments came like sudden storms. "You never tell me anything," Omar said one evening, voice tight. "You just take it all in." "I don't want to make things worse," Ayesha answered, and the words were thin as tissue. Mrs. Khan's criticisms were not always loud. Sometimes they were a look, a pause, a comparison to the daughter she had imagined. Once, when Ayesha tried to explain a recipe her mother used to make, Mrs. Khan cut her off. "You don't understand our ways." The sentence closed like a door. Ayesha tried the obvious fixes. She worked extra shifts, believing money could buy peace. She followed advice from a friend. "Move out, don't let her control you," and imagined leaving. But those Western fixes, work harder, buy more, cut ties, left her more exhausted. The designer scarf hung untouched. The extra hours of the bakery left her hands raw and her patience thinner. Isolation crept in. She stopped answering her mother's calls from Lahore because she could not bear to tell her the truth. One Friday, soaked through from the rain, she ducked into the local mosque before Juma. She had not planned to go. She had gone because the rain had nowhere else to go, and she followed it. The imam's voice rose and fell, and a verse slipped into her like a small, cool hand. "Repel evil with that which is better," he said, and the words sat in the room like a lamp. Ayesha felt something loosen inside her chest. She thought of the Prophet, peace be upon him, how he met cruelty with mercy, how he bore insults and still forgave. The stories were not lectures now, they were a kind of company. She began with the smallest thing, tea. Not a grand gesture, not a strategy, just a cup poured with steady hands. The first time she brought it to Mrs. Khan, the older woman's fingers tightened around the cup as if it were a fragile bird. "You didn't have to," Mrs. Khan said, voice flat. "I wanted to," Ayesha said. Her voice was small. She left the cup and walked away before she could see the reaction. Days passed. Ayesha kept bringing tea. She asked about Mrs. Khan's day, about the ache in her knee, about the old songs she hummed when she thought no one listened. Sometimes Mrs. Khan answered with a curt word. Sometimes she did not answer at all. The house did not change overnight, but the small acts were like seeds planted in cold soil. Later, she found Mrs. Khan sitting at the table, hands folded, eyes closed. Ayesha sat opposite and said, "I'm sorry." The apology was a small, honest thing. Mrs. Khan did not answer, but she did not leave the room. A real crisis came when Mrs. Khan fell ill with a fever. The house tilted. Omar's worry was a visible thing. He called in sick and hovered in the doorway, helpless. Ayesha took over the care. Soup, warm compresses, the careful folding of blankets. She sat up through the night, watching the rise and fall of Mrs. Khan's chest, listening to the shallow breaths. One night, when the fever broke and the rain had stopped, Mrs. Khan opened her eyes and looked at Ayesha. The look was not the same as before. It was softer, as if something inside had shifted. "You stayed," she said, voice small. "I did," Ayesha answered. She felt a strange, sudden lightness, as if a window had been opened in a room that had been closed for years. The change was not dramatic. It was not a sudden conversion. It was a slow thaw. Mrs. Khan began to ask about Ayesha's mother, about the food she missed, about the city she had left. She brought out an old tin of pickles and offered them to Ayesha with a tentative smile. "My mother used to make these," she said. "Not many people like them now." Ayesha laughed, a sound that surprised her. "I like them," she said. Umar watched the small exchanges and one evening took Ayesha's hand across the table. "I didn't see how hard you were trying," he said. "I'm sorry." The apology was clumsy but true. They both cried, and the sound of it was not shameful but cleansing. There were still hard days. Money tightened again when Umar's hours were cut. Mrs. Khan had moments of old sharpness. But the house had a different rhythm now. Tea was poured without tension. Laughter came back in small doses. Ayesha began to sleep more than she had in months. Her prayers felt less like a list and more like a conversation. Sometimes, in the quiet after Fajr, she would think of the Imam's words and the Prophet's patience. She would remember the Sahaba standing in the cold, and the thought steadied her. The final softness came not as a declaration, but as a small, private moment. One afternoon, as the sun cut through the clouds and the house smelled of baking bread, Mrs. Khan reached across the table and smoothed a stray hair from Ayesha's forehead. Her fingers were rough and warm. "You are good to us," she said, and there was no edge to the words. Ayesha's throat tightened. She wanted to say so many things, about the nights she had cried, about the fear that had lived in her chest, about the prayers that had kept her moving. Instead, she smiled and poured another cup of tea. The healing was not a tidy arc. It left scars and quiet spaces where old hurts had been, but the house felt less like a courtroom and more like a home. The small acts, tea, questions, staying when it would have been easier to leave, had not been magic. They had been patience made visible, a steady insistence that kindness could be a kind of courage.